There's very little in this collection in the way of explicit reference to the tensions between Israelis and Arabs. I think the only story that addresses it at all is Digging, which you read so much of. And there's that line, well, first of all, of course, the elderly Jewish man and the young Arab are each convinced that the other is digging beneath the house at night, and each are suspicious of each other. It's hard, of course, not to hear some kind of political overtones in the story.
Yeah. Well, there are political overtones in this story. There are some remote political echoes in other stories. There is the rumbling of aircrafts or helicopters coming back from a combat mission in one of the stories. But all of this withdraws to the background. It will be a waste of a reading to read scenes from village life as an allegory about Israeli life. I know I'm wasting my words. People will read it as an allegory, whatever I say and whatever I do. If I wrote a little story about father, mother, daughter, and pocket money, some of my readers will immediately say, aha, the father is the Israelis, the mother is the Palestinians, the pocket money is the flawed economy, the daughter is the young generation. I can't help it. But this is the destiny of literature coming from a troubled part of the world. But it will be a waste of a reading to try to read forcefully CNN headline news into those stories. They are about Israel which never makes the headlines. There is a gap, an abyss between Israel of the media and Israel as I know it. Israel of the media consists of about 80% fanatic settlers and ultra-religious Orthodox people, 19% heartless soldiers at the roadblocks, and 1% saintly intellectuals like myself who criticize the government and struggle for peace. Real Israel, who lives on the coastal plain, is secular to the bone, hedonistic, noisy, passionate, warm-hearted, greedy, materialistic, screamy, pushy, and very endearing in some ways. You will understand from what I say that I love Israel even at times when I don't like it. In fact, I love Israel even at times when I can't stand it, but such a juxtaposition happens in the best of family. So the stories of Tel Ilan are, yes, they are about Israel, and no, they are not about the CNN's Israel. They are about Israel which never makes it to the news headlines.
I think that's a very useful distinction. And I know it's been said that in Israel, one cannot escape history. It's not lived from the television screen. It's lived in the world around us. And yet the landscape of your fiction, of course, is influenced by these elements of political tension, which you've addressed obviously explicitly in your journalistic writings, in which you've expressed a kind of cautious optimism, I guess, about the prospects for peace. Yet you have insisted on a separation between your journalistic work and your fiction, even going so far as to say that you write them with two different pens.
That's true. I have two different pens on my desk, which will indicate that I don't use the computer. I'm a Neanderthal man. I write with pens. And I have one pen to tell stories and another pen to tell the government to go to hell. And I never confuse the two. When I am in total agreement with myself on anything at all, I don't write a story. I write an angry essay or an article. When I hear more than just one voice inside myself, when I am in a slight disagreement with myself, when there are different voices in me, that's when I know that I'm at least pregnant with a story or a novel.
But I guess what I have to ask is whether such a separation can ever be completely possible in a place such as Israel, where there's no escaping reality, as it were.
No, it's not complete separation, because deep down below, I love people, and I write my stories and I write my articles out of love and not out of hatred, and also out of curiosity. I happen to believe that curiosity, both political curiosity and family curiosity, I believe curiosity is a moral virtue. I believe curious people are better people than people who are not curious. I believe curious people are even better lovers than people who are not curious. But this may be too early in the evening to discuss this aspect.
It's common for people to speak of the disillusionment of Israelis in the wake of the failed peace process. And one notices that many of the characters in this book are, I would say, they're perhaps not so much disillusioned as resigned about the ways their lives have turned out, which is very rarely the way they expected their lives to turn out.
Well, this book is about small-time people and out-of-the-way people. It's not about heroes. It's not about people who shake the earth and who shake their life and who change their own lives and lives of others. These are stories about people who are stuck in a corner of life. In many ways, I am inspired by Chekhov, by his small-time dreamers, people who may or may not have great ideals, but they keep stumbling on anything. So yes, there is something Chekhovian in those stories.
I want to ask one last question before I take a look at the questions that we have from the audience. On the subject of using books as bridges between nations, could you tell the story about how the Arabic translation of A Tale of Love and Darkness came about?
Yes, this is a very moving story. Some 6 years ago, a young Israeli Arab student, George Khoury by name, was jogging near Mount Scopus near the university campus in Jerusalem. He was shot in the head and murdered by Palestinian terrorists who mistook him for a Jew. His loving family decided to finance an Arab edition of A Tale of Love and Darkness and dedicate the Arab translation to the memory of George Khoury, who was murdered by fanatics mistaking him for a Jew, in order to improve the understanding between the two peoples. And there was found a courageous Arab publisher in Beirut, Lebanon, who published the book in Lebanon and distributed it all over the Arab world, to a screamy reaction from Hezbollah and others who threatened to kill the publisher, and from very extreme responses in the Arab press, beginning with critics who accused the publishers of distributing Zionist propaganda, to critics who said we Arabs should write books like this. Recently, and now I'm answering a question you didn't ask me, very recently, I received a copy of a pirate Kurdish edition of A Tale of Love and Darkness, published in the north of Iraq and discovered by my Arab publisher as he was roaming a bookstore in Mosul called Kurdistan in northern Iraq. So there is a pirate edition in northern Iraq as well.
And then another part of this story, which I hope is not the end of the story of your book's life in Arabic, is that you sent it to Marwan Barghouti in prison in the hope that he would read the story and come to understand something about Israel through it.
Yes. Marwan Barghouti is a Palestinian activist who is sentenced for life imprisonment in an Israeli jail for terrorism. I knew Barghouti from before the Intifada, from the times when he was a fairly pragmatic and realistic Palestinian secular leader. He is still in jail, still pragmatic, and still believing in a compromise and in a two-state solution. I sent him A Tale of Love and Darkness because I thought it may be useful for him to read my story and the story of my family. If I could send a copy to Ahmadinejad and be sure that he reads it, I will send him a copy as well for his education.
And did you get any reaction from Marwan Barghouti?
They don't allow him to write letters from jail, so I'm not even sure he finally received the book, or maybe the book was held by the prison authorities. I don't know.
Regardless, I think just the simple fact of your sending him the book in Arabic translation in prison is
Well,
such
it
a
created
wonderful statement.
a burst of rage in Israel, and I was called a traitor by many Israelis.
Well, when the Israelis and the Arabs are both calling you a traitor, you must be doing something right.
Well, I carry the badge of a traitor on my lapel as a decoration. I think almost every person who ever broke some taboos and struggled for some compromise between nations had been accused of treason by others. I tell you who is a traitor. A traitor is a person who changes in the eyes of those who do not change and who hate change and who don't even understand what change is. Thank you.